Hello, this is another one of my videos on the first Baha'i 9-year plan from 1964 to 73. This one dealing with recognition and property goals. It's part of an old manuscript of mine, The Universal House of Justice in the Baha'i World, 1963-73. As with other videos in the series, the main source is the book Messages from the Universal House of Justice, 1963 to 1986. I'll give the reference below. And there's also an old article of mine I co-wrote with Moojan Momen on the Baha'i Faith 1957-1988, which provides wider context. So let me start off by talking about official recognition goals. It was Shoghi Effendi's policy to try and obtain both legal status for Baha'i spiritual assemblies and government recognition of Baha'i holy days and of the right of Baha'is to take those days off work, as well as recognition of Baha'i marriages wherever this was possible. The first of these objectives was particularly important in giving Baha'i institutions the right to own property as legally constituted bodies, whilst the second has been an important means of increasing the public recognition of the faith and of gaining greater prestige in wider society. The House of Justice continued to pursue both of these objectives. The 9-year plan called for the incorporation, the legal incorporation of 65 national spiritual assemblies, local spiritual assembly incorporations to be raised to 1,386, including at least one in every one of the states of the USA, and Baha'i marriage certificates to be recognized in 87 countries, and Baha'i holy days to be recognized in 95. All such goals necessarily depended on favorable external circumstances, the willingness of governments or other legal agencies to accord recognition to Baha'i institutions. So in terms of the incorporation of national spiritual assemblies, in terms of legal incorporation, it proved relatively easy to register or incorporate most of the national assemblies. Thus, in 1963, 38 out of 56 national assemblies were incorporated, whilst by 1973, 90 out of 113 were, that's 80%, well in excess of the overall planned goal of 65 assemblies. Only in Asia did a substantial number of assemblies fail to obtain the legal status goals. 7 out of 10 not incorporated in 1963, 12 out of 25 not incorporated in 1973. Success in incorporating local spiritual assemblies was far more limited, reflecting both the strict legal criteria which an assembly had to meet so as to gain corporate status, and the relative weakness of many local assemblies. Thus, in 1964, only 413 local assemblies out of a worldwide total then of 4,566, that's 9%, had been incorporated, and whilst the number of incorporated assemblies had almost quadrupled by 1973 to 1,556, these still only represented 9.1% of the total. As with the locality of local assembly figures, it will be noted that there were considerable disparities between the continents in terms of legal incorporation. Whilst Asia and Africa had the largest number of local assemblies, they had the smallest proportion of assemblies to have gained legal status. In the case of Africa, 2% in 1964, going up to 3% in 73, and 3% rising to 9% in Asia. By contrast, a much higher proportion of local assemblies in the Americas, Australasia, and Europe had achieved legal status, 32 to 16% in the Americas, 40 to 20% in Australasia, and 34 to 31% in Europe. Turning now to official recognition of Baha'i holy days and or marriages. Overall, the total number of countries in which Baha'i holy days and or marriages were officially recognized by the authorities was limited, with respectively only 20 and 26 countries in 1964, 64 and 40 countries in 1973, less than the planned goals of gaining recognition of Baha'i marriage certificates in 87 countries and of Baha'i holy days in 95 countries. Nevertheless, some recognitions were significant. One of these was the realization of the long-sought legal recognition of the faith in Italy in 1966, which resulted in the legal incorporation of the National Spiritual Assembly and of all local spiritual assemblies, and enabled the Baha'is to establish their own publishing trust, an achievement hailed by the House of Justice as a milestone in the progress of the faith in the heart of Christendom. Secondly, the recognition of faith as one of Iceland's religions by Reswan 1967 enabled the local assembly in Reykjavik to be legally incorporated, its chairman to perform Baha'i marriages and burials, Baha'i institutions to be given certain tax exemptions, and Baha'i holy days to be observed by the Baha'is legally. Turning now to property acquisitions, both Shoghi Effendi and the Universal Court of Justice set the Baha'i National Assembly as the goal of acquiring properties, specifically a suitable building to serve as a national Baha'i headquarters and the seat and meeting place of the National Assembly, the National House of Quds, and a site for a future Baha'i temple, and a national endowment, a piece of land owned by the National Spiritual Assembly. Each National Spiritual Assembly and projected National Assembly area was to have one of each of these types of property acquisitions. And both in 1963, 1964 and 1973, almost all assemblies had achieved these goals. The acquisition of temple sites evidently proved to be the most difficult objective. In 1963-64, only 46 out of 56 assemblies had such sites, whilst by 1973, 15 out of 113 assemblies still lacked temple sites. The House also set goals of establishing, in certain countries, teaching institutes, mostly to some national spiritual assemblies in poorer parts of the world, 32 of those, institutions of Baha'i learning for summer and winter schools, 4 of those, Baha'i-operated public schools in both Burma and Uganda, and local Hazrat Quds and endowments in 20 and 10 countries, respectively. Then there was the goal of building 2 Baha'i temples, which I'll talk about in a later video, and the National Spiritual Assemblies of Iran and Iraq were directed to acquire specific Baha'i holy sites. In Iran, the Baha'is were to acquire 2 sites associated with the Bab, the prison of Marku, and his place of execution in Tabriz. They were also to transfer the remains of the Bab's wife to a chosen site and construct her tomb. In Iraq, the Baha'is were to acquire the site of the Reswan garden in Baghdad, where Baha'u'llah had first declared his messianic status to some of his immediate followers in 1863, and identify and transfer the remains of the Bab's mother. In the event, it appears that it was not possible to achieve any of these objectives. However, another fortress in which the Bab had been imprisoned at Tehrik was acquired. So many thanks to you for listening, and particular thanks to my patrons for their kind support and encouragement. Without them, I wouldn't be able to make these videos. My apologies for the greater volume of external noise I think I've had during this particular video making session. You're very welcome to support my channel if you should so wish Do like, comment and share on the videos, it really does help. Subscribe if you want to be notified of future videos, and I'll give a Patreon link below if you want to provide practical support. Next week we'll talk about translation and diversity goals during the 9-year plan. Have a good day.